There she goes again, turning our family home into a zoo. My mother-in-law's voice carried across the backyard as I gently lifted a trembling rescue puppy from my car. It's embarrassing enough that my son married a woman with no ambition, but now she's making us look like the neighborhood shelter. I held the scared puppy closer, trying to shield him from her harsh words. After 5 years of marriage to her son David, I'd grown accustomed to Margaret's constant criticism, but it still stung. The tiny creature in my arms had been found abandoned in a storm drain, and I couldn't just leave him there. This was my 20th foster animal this year, and each one had faced the same disapproval from my mother-in-law. We shared the large family property. David and I lived in the guest house while his parents occupied the main house. It was meant to be temporary, just until we saved enough for our own place. But the arrangement stretched on when David lost his job last year. Now, every rescue animal I brought home was scrutinized and criticized as another sign of my unsuitability for their family. "Emily," Margaret called out, her heels clicking against the pavement as she approached. "I thought we discussed this. No more strays. What will the neighbors think? The Hendersons already asked if we're running an illegal shelter." I turned to face her, noting how her perfectly styled hair and designer outfit contrasted sharply with my muddy jeans and rain-soaked jacket. "He was dying, Margaret. The shelter's full, and he needs medical attention before he can be adopted." She wrinkled her nose, eyeing the puppy with disdain. "And I suppose you'll be using your grocery money to pay for his treatment? Really, Emily, this obsession with broken animals has to stop. You're embarrassing the family." The puppy whimpered, and I instinctively pulled him closer. "They're not broken, they are healing. And yes, I'll pay for his treatment myself. I have savings. Savings that should be going toward moving out of our guest house," she snapped. "David deserves better than a wife who wastes money on lost causes." The mention of David made my heart ache. My husband tried to support my rescue work, but lately, the strain of his mother's disapproval had been wearing him down. Just last night, he'd suggested I take a break from fostering, at least until we got back on our feet. I carried the puppy toward the guest house, trying to ignore Margaret's continued criticism. Inside, I had transformed our spare room into a recovery space for rescued animals. Currently, it housed 2 cats recovering from surgery and an elderly dog with arthritis. Each one had a story. Each one needed someone to believe in them. As I settled the new puppy into a warm blanket, my phone buzzed. It was a message from the local animal rescue where I volunteered. "Emergency case coming in. Senior dog, owner passed away. Need experienced foster ASAP." I glanced at the trembling puppy, then at the other animals resting peacefully in their beds. My heart said yes, but Margaret's words echoed in my mind. Was I really jeopardizing my marriage for these animals? Before I could respond, I heard David's car pull up. Through the window, I watched as Margaret rushed to meet him, no doubt ready to report my latest transgression. I saw her gesturing toward our house, her face animated with disapproval. David walked in a few minutes later, his expression tired. "Mom told me about the new puppy," he said, loosening his tie. "Emily, honey, maybe she has a point. We can't save them all." I stood up from where I'd been monitoring the puppy's temperature. "I'm not trying to save them all, David. Just the ones I can. This little guy wouldn't have survived another night in that drain." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew meant he was stressed. "I know your heart's in the right place, but we need to think about our future. Mom's been talking about selling the property, and we need to save for our own place." The news hit me like a physical blow. Selling the property? Where would we go? More importantly, where would I keep the animals I fostered? "I've been applying for jobs," I said quietly, "and most of the medical expenses are covered by the rescue organization. I just provide the care and space." David sat down heavily on the couch. "It's not just about the money, Mom's right. What do people think when they see our home filled with sick animals? How does that reflect on our family?" I looked around at the peaceful faces of the animals in my care. Each one had shown remarkable progress. Each one had a fighting spirit that amazed me. How could caring for these creatures be something to be ashamed of? "Your mother doesn't see what I see," I said finally. "These animals aren't broken or embarrassing. They're survivors. And sometimes all they need is someone to give them a chance." David stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the main house where his mother lived. "Just promise me you'll think about taking a break for us?" I didn't answer immediately. The puppy had finally fallen asleep, his tiny chest rising and falling steadily. The message about the senior dog still waited on my phone, unanswered. Everything I believed in, everything I had worked for, was being challenged. But as I watched the peaceful animals around me, I knew I couldn't just stop. These creatures needed someone in their corner, someone who saw their worth beyond their current circumstances, even if that someone was just the family embarrassment who lived in the guest house. I reached for my phone, ready to respond to the rescue's message. Sometimes doing the right thing meant standing your ground, even when everyone else thought you were wrong. I just hoped David would understand. Little did I know, events were about to unfold that would change everything, especially Margaret's perspective on my embarrassing passion for helping animals. 2 weeks after the puppy incident, I sat in my makeshift animal recovery room, checking on my latest rescue, the senior dog I'd agreed to foster. His name was Duke, a gentle German shepherd whose owner had passed away. Despite Margaret's vocal disapproval, I couldn't turn him away. That morning started like any other, with Margaret's pointed comments during her routine inspection of the property. But something was different about her. She seemed distracted, almost anxious, clutching a letter in her perfectly manicured hands. "Emily," she called through the screen door, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. Is that dog good with people?" I looked up, surprised by the question. Margaret had never shown interest in any of my fosters before. "Duke? Yes, he's wonderful with everyone. He was a therapy dog before his owner passed away." She nodded absently, then turned and walked away without her usual criticism. I watched her go, puzzled by the strange interaction. Later that afternoon, David came home early, looking worried. He found me giving medication to one of the recovering cats. "Mom got some news from her doctor today," he said quietly. "She's been diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. Her doctor recommended a therapy dog." I froze, the pieces suddenly clicking into place, her distracted behavior, the question about Duke, the letter she'd been holding. "The thing is," David continued, "there's a 6-month waiting list for certified therapy dogs. Mom's doctor says she needs support now. I know it's a lot to ask, but Duke has years of experience as a therapy dog." I finished softly, looking at the gentle shepherd dozing in the corner. He'd been with us for just 2 weeks, but his calm, loving nature was already evident. That evening, Margaret appeared at our door again, something I'd never seen her do voluntarily. Her perfectly composed facade had cracks in it, her hair slightly disheveled, her designer outfit replaced by a simple sweater and slacks. "I understand," she said stiffly, that Duke was a therapy dog." I nodded, watching as Duke lifted his head, his ears perking up at the sound of her voice. Without prompting, he stood and walked over to her, gently pressing his nose against her hand. Margaret's breath caught. Her hand trembled as she hesitantly touched Duke's head. "My doctor says I need." She couldn't finish the sentence, but I understood. "Would you like to spend some time with him?" I asked quietly. He's very good at listening. To my surprise, tears welled up in her eyes. For the first time since I'd known her, Margaret's perfect mask crumbled completely. She sank to her knees, and Duke immediately moved closer, offering his steady, unconditional presence. I slipped out quietly, giving them privacy. Through the window, I watched as my mother-in-law, the woman who had called me an embarrassment for caring about broken animals, wrapped her arms around Duke and finally let herself break down. Over the next few days, Margaret began visiting regularly. She would sit with Duke, sometimes talking softly to him, sometimes just sitting in silence with her hand in his fur. I noticed small changes. Her hands stopped shaking, her breathing became steadier, her eyes lost some of their haunted look. One afternoon, I found her in the recovery room, watching as I changed the bandages on the puppy we'd rescued from the storm drain. Instead of her usual disapproving comments, she asked quietly, "Does it hurt him?" "No," I explained, surprised by her interest. "He's healing well. See how the infection is clearing up." She moved closer, really looking at the puppy for the first time. You're good at this," she admitted reluctantly. "How did you learn?" "Years of volunteering at shelters," I said. "Every animal is different, but they all need the same basic things: patience, care, and someone to believe in them." Margaret was quiet for a long moment, absently stroking Duke's fur. "Like people," she finally whispered, so softly I almost missed it. I pretended not to notice the tears she quickly wiped away. Sometimes healing happened in small moments, in quiet revelations that didn't need acknowledgement. The transformation was gradual but undeniable. Margaret started asking questions about the other animals, learning their names and their stories. She began bringing over old blankets for their beds, then special treats she'd bought just in case they might need them. One day, I overheard her on the phone with a friend from the country club. "No, we're not running an illegal shelter," she said firmly. "My daughter-in-law operates a recovery space for animals in transition. It's quite remarkable, actually." I had to sit down, overwhelmed by her words, not just the defense of my work, but the fact that she had called me her daughter-in-law instead of David's wife for the first time ever. Duke continued to work his magic, both as a therapy dog for Margaret and as a bridge between us. Through him, she began to understand what I'd known all along, that sometimes helping others heal can heal something in ourselves too. 3 months after Duke entered our lives, our home felt completely different. Margaret's daily visits weren't just for Duke anymore. She took genuine interest in all the animals, even helping me clean cages and administer medication. The woman who once called my foster work embarrassing now proudly told her friends about each animal's progress. But the biggest surprise came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. I was teaching Margaret how to bottle feed a rescued kitten when she suddenly said, "I've been thinking about the property." My heart sank, remembering the talk about selling it. Before I could respond, she continued, "The old pool house, with some renovation, it could make an excellent recovery space for the animals. Better than cramming them into your guest house." I nearly dropped the bottle I was holding. "The pool house? But I thought you wanted us to move out." Margaret gently adjusted the kitten's position. "Actually, I've been speaking with your father-in-law. We think this work you do is important. The property's too big for just us anyway. And seeing how you've helped these animals. Helped me." She paused, blinking rapidly. "The pool house just needs some updating. George already called a contractor." I sat there stunned as she outlined their plans. Proper medical stations, separate recovery areas, even a small office space. The pool house would become a legitimate animal recovery center, with me in charge. "But why?" I finally managed to ask. Margaret was quiet for a moment, stroking Duke's head where he lay beside her. "Because I was wrong," she said softly. "I called these animals broken, called you an embarrassment, but you showed me that healing isn't embarrassing, it's brave. These creatures you help, they're not broken. They're just waiting for someone to see their worth, like Duke did for me." Tears welled in my eyes as she continued. "Besides, the Henderson's daughter asked if she could volunteer here. Apparently, word has spread about the amazing work you do." 2 weeks later, I stood in the renovated pool house, barely recognizing it. Clean medical stations lined one wall, comfortable recovery areas filled the main space, and a small office held all my files and supplies. My little fostering operation had transformed into something I only dreamed about. David came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. "Mom's already talking about fundraising events," he chuckled. "I think she's more excited about this than you are." I never thought, I started, but stopped as I saw Margaret approaching through the window, Duke faithfully by her side. She was carrying a large sign, and my heart caught when I read it. "Second Chance Recovery Center, where healing hearts find home." She had it professionally made, complete with a logo featuring a dog and cat silhouette. "Well?" she asked anxiously. "Is it too much?" The ladies at the club helped design it. I hugged her, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. "It's perfect," I whispered. "The contractor's adding a small apartment above the center," she added. "So you can be close to the animals at night. The guest house just isn't practical anymore. Not with the number of rescues we'll be able to help now." The word rang in my ears. Not just my work anymore, but our family's mission. That evening, as I made my rounds checking on the animals, I found Margaret sitting with our newest rescue, a scared horse who'd been abandoned at a local stable. She was reading to him softly, something she'd learned could help calm anxious animals. "You know," she said, not looking up from her book, "I used to think you were bringing broken things into our home. But really, you were bringing healing. These animals, they're not just getting better, they're helping others heal too." I thought about Duke, still faithfully attending Margaret's therapy sessions, about the kitten we bottle-fed together, now adopted by a little girl who'd lost her mother, about all the lives touched and changed by what we did here. We're all healing together, I said softly. Margaret smiled, reaching for my hand. Yes, we are. And I'm so proud to have you as my daughter. Not daughter-in-law, daughter. As I looked around at our growing sanctuary, at the family we built, both human and animal, I realized something beautiful. Sometimes the things we think will embarrass or diminish us end up being the very things that make us whole. And sometimes the people who seem most opposed to our dreams end up being their strongest supporters. Duke trotted over, pressing against Margaret's side as she wiped away tears. He looked at me with wise eyes, as if to say he'd known all along how this would turn out. And maybe he had. After all, he'd helped heal not just Margaret's heart, but our entire family's understanding of what it meant to truly care for others. The family embarrassment had become the family's pride, and our home had become exactly what I'd always dreamed it could be, a place where healing hearts, both human and animal, found their way home.